I'm Eddie Webb, Director of Solutions Engineering here at CircleCI. Itiel, would you care to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Eddie. So my name is Itiel Schwartz, and I'm the lead production engineer and first developer at Rookout.
Awesome. Let's take a look at the agenda for today. First, Itiel and I are just going to share some brief overviews of CircleCI and Rookout before Itiel dives into a live demo session debugging with non-breaking breakpoints, a term I just love. Then I'll talk a little bit about CircleCI orbs and the problem we're hoping to solve with them before Itiel dives into a deeper demo, actually using CircleCI and Rookout together to debug your tests without adding any additional lines of code. And then, as I mentioned, we'll hold a Q&A at the end for any questions you might have about CircleCI, Rookout, or anything you've seen today. So CircleCI was founded in 2011. It's 180 employees worldwide. It's actually a little bit more than that. I believe closer to 200 now. It's hard to keep these marketing slides up to date. The same is true with our developer community. It's exploded. What is still true is that we were named a continuous integration leader by Forrester in 2017, and we continue to lead the pack there, both in terms of vision and our ability to execute. And we're also hiring. So if you'd like to be a solutions engineer on my team or interested in other roles, including marketing, core engineering, or product, please take a look at our job boards. We have tons of great opportunities open. Itiel, can you tell us a little bit about Rookout?
Yeah, sure, thanks. So Rookout was founded in 2018, and we empower developers to use non-breaking breakpoint to collect data from live code. And we help developers to save hours of debugging and context switching every day, and we are available everywhere. It can be on-prem, cloud, container, serverless, and even on your CI/CD pipeline. So without doing more talks, let's go for a live demo. And I know live demo can be tricky, but I'm sure everything will go on great. So let me just move this really quick. So for this demonstration, for this live demo, I'm going to show you a very simple application I've built. And basically, it's a mathematical server. And as you can see here, the source code is 15 lines of code or even less. And basically, it has only one REST endpoint, the plus, and it receives the first number and the second number as URL parameters, and it just combined both of them and show you the result. So let's just look at a very quick demo of this. So as you can see, 22 plus 3 equals 25, and I can play with the numbers. I can do 12 plus 3 equals 15, and yeah, everything is great. Because I'm a good developer, or at least try to, I wrote some tests, and they are passing on CircleCI, which is great. But now, let's say I want to debug my code. Let's say it's running on the cloud or somewhere else. And usually, in order to debug our code, what we need to do is to add additional logs and to go over a pull request and then building our Docker maybe, or building our server and then deploying it. And it takes a lot of time and it's very tedious. Here at Rookout, we have a tool that helps you to save a lot of time and context switching. So this is the Rookout IDE. It's a web application in approokout.com, and it was built to make developers feel at home. On the left, you have the sources, similar to the one that are on GitHub and on my local computer, and you have the server. So on the center of the screen, you have the source code. On the right screen, you have the non-breaking breakpoints. You can put a lot of data. You can collect a lot of different data and send it to a lot of places using Rookout. And on the bottom of the screen, you have the message pane, and we're going to see debug messages coming very soon from our server. So without further ado, I'm just going to try and debug my server, which is already running. So what I'm going to do now is to add a non-breaking breakpoint at line 7. So I've just done it. And I'm going to try and hit refresh. So send in another query. And voila, as you can see, I got a new message. And this message contained all of the local variables that were available on the stage of this point. So it's just like your IDE, just it doesn't break, it doesn't stop your application from running. but it sends you all of the data that you need to have in order to debug. So I can even expand it a little bit so it will be easier for everyone to see. So I see that the first number is 12, the second number is 3. I have a request object, a response object, and I can even see the stack trace to this point. I have the IP, I have the file name. So basically everything I need to have in order to debug. And it's important to say that Rookout didn't really stop my server. It just collected the data and sent it to our web application. Okay, so great. So now I'm sure you're asking yourself 2 questions. How hard is it to install Rookout, to integrate it with your own code? And I'm very happy to say it's very, very easy. All you need to do, this is the server.js, the file that is running my server. And in here, you have the Rookout installation. So the first line is to import the module. In our case, all you need to do is npm install Rookout. And later, I'm going to start the module rook.start, and basically that's it. That's all you need to do in order to install Rookout. And later, I'm going to show you even an easier way of installing Rookout using the CircleCI org. And you don't even need to change your source code in order to install Rookout. So this is the installation part. And the second question I'm sure you're asking yourself is, okay, where can I use it? How can it make my life easier? So the first thing that comes to mind is to debug your production and staging environment. So let's say you have a bug in production. It happens to the best of us. And you don't really understand. You don't have enough logs. So in the org world, without Rookout, you need to add the logger.log and try to collect more data in order to figure out what is the issue. And then you need to go over and do git push and go over and do pull request and build it and deploy it. And it takes a lot of time and it's tedious. But by using Rookout, by installing it, you can debug your production environment in 1 click of a button. So that's the first use case. The second use case is basically debugging microservices, because microservices are very popular at the moment and it's great, but the big downside of microservices is that it's hard to debug. You try to understand what's the problem on the first server or maybe on the second server, but using Rookout, you can add a non-breaking breakpoint both on server A and on server B. And in this way, in here, you can see messages from both microservices, which is great. The third use case, which I'm going to talk later today, is to debug your tests. You have a test suite and you're running it and it failed for some reason and everything works great on your computer, but for some reason the tester keeps failing and you just don't understand why. And using Rookout, you can debug your code while it's running on CircleCI, and we're going to see it in a few more moments. And yeah, I think I'm going to pass it back to you, Eddie.
Awesome. Thank you, Etiel. So with all these great solutions out there, the challenge that CircleCI had was, how do we enable easy integrations with these great third-party solutions without undermining the deterministic nature that configuration as code gives you in your software delivery pipelines? So for that reason, traditional solutions like plugins are out of the question. And that's why we came up with Orbs. And Orbs is the ability to encapsulate reusable pieces of configuration to share across your project, across your team, entire organization, or the community as a whole. And what this lets you do is to make it easy to maintain a CircleCI configuration that's up to date and always in sync with the latest offerings. So let's take a look at what actually comprises an orb. There's 3 main areas to every orb. The first is commands, and commands are the steps you actually want to run within your pipeline. The next is executors, and executors are the environments in which you want your jobs to run. So this could be any Docker image of your choice, it could be a full virtual machine, or it could even be a Mac OS image. And additionally, you can decide how much CPU and memory does this particular job need in order to run successfully. And then that's the third piece of Orbs, is the job themselves. And it pulls together the commands and the executors that you want to run for that full picture. So we can see that down in lines 19 and 20, our hello build job uses our default executor, which in this case is just a bash image. And then we call our say hello command, which simply prints to the screen, hello Circle user. So that's an easy overview of the components within an orb, but it's not very illustrative of what the power is in a real world example. So let's take a look at a real example next. Don't bother trying to read this. I apologize, I understand it's way too small. But the point is, there's a lot of text there. This is a real world example of trying to deploy a Docker image out to Amazon's container service, ECS. So it's 3 simple jobs: build, test, and deploy. But it takes almost 70 lines of configuration to get us there. And we can see what that same example looks like when taking advantage of an orb.
Sure.
So now we can see the much more concise example of that ECS deployment using an orb. Line 3, we declare that we want to leverage this versioned orb called ECS tools. And then lines 8 through 15, we declare the jobs that we want to run. Again, build, test, and deploy. And the only parameters we actually need to provide to these jobs are the things that differentiate our use case from every other use case in the community. And we can take advantage of these great solutions and the ecosystem out there without having to rewrite everything ourselves. Again, very akin to the way package management and dependency management works in most software languages today. And before I hand it back, I just want to note that Rookout is one of many great partners that we have in the Orbs ecosystem, because Orbs are expandable and orchestratable. So you can actually take several different pieces, your testing solutions, your deployment solutions, your debugging tools, and your code scanning tools, and orchestrate them all together for your end-to-end software delivery pipelines in a really powerful manner using CircleCI Orbs and great partners like Rookout. So with that, let's get building it, TL.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie. And so now we're going to see how we can use Rookout and CircleCI Orb in order to debug our tests. So let me just go real quick to a new branch I created, and it's called adding minus endpoint. And as you might have guessed by the name, I've added a minus endpoint to our server. So this was the old code, but now we have a new endpoint called minus, and basically it gets the first number and the second number, and it subtract the first number from the second number. So I'll do a very, very quick demo of it, just so everyone will understand. So instead of plus, I can just do minus. And yeah, 12 minus 3 equals 9. Yeah, great, everything works. And also on this branch, I added the CircleCI orb. And in order to do it, I must say it's very, very simple. So let me just select to compare with selected. And okay, great. So on the left, we have the master configuration. This was the config YAML before adding the Rookout orb, and this is the code we have on our master. So basically, it does a checkout, then npm install, and running our tests. But now we added the Rookout orb, which is super easy. First of all, I added the orb at the start of the config YAML. And then I just switched, instead of using the normal run, I'm using the Rookout node run script, which basically allows me to use Rookout inside of my CircleCI and to debug my test using it. And also I'm using the CircleCI branch as some sort of identifier for the Rookout ID. So that's it, like 3 lines of code and you have Rookout installed. So now that we have Rookout, and we're really happy, let me tell you the downside that we have here is, and our tests are failing for some reason. And this is the branch and adding minus endpoint. Like I said, I'm trying to be a good developer, so I added some tests in order to check the new functionality. So I have a test that says 1 minus 1 should be equal to 0. But for some reason, instead of getting 200 response code, status codes from the server, I'm receiving 500, which is bad. And it's not what I expected to see. But luckily for me, I have the Rookout orb, and I can debug my test without needing to do anything. All I need to do now is to go to the Rookout server, the Rookout IDE. Let me just close this. And I'm going to the adding minus endpoint. And I'm going to app.js. And just like the previous example, I'm going to add a non-breaking breakpoint on the minus endpoint this time. And using CircleCI rerun mechanism, I'm just going to do a rerun of the failed job. So, you know, this is one of the parts that I really hate as a developer, that you need to wait for your test to start running and you just don't understand why is my tests aren't passing. I saw locally everything is great, but for some reason, I don't know, things keep failing. And as I expected, I did a rerun for this workflow and it failed. Okay, I expected this to happen. But luckily for me, I got 2 new messages on the Rookout IDE. And the first message, the first number equals to 7, and the second number equals to x. And let's just see the test for a second. So I'm opening them in here. So as you can see, I have a test that, okay, that's it. First number equals 7, second number equals x, and I expected 500, everything worked as expected. The second message I received is a little bit different. I see the first number equals to 1, but the second number for some reason is null. And when looking at the test, I see first number equals 1, second number equals 1. Okay, that's strange. Let's see the code. And I see I'm taking the data from request.query. So let's try and understand. So I'm going to request, and inside request, I'm going to see the query. And I see first number equals 1, second number equals 1. And the server code, it says second number. The data I received, it says second number. And if I'm going to look on my tests, I see that, just look in here. So I see I really passed that second number, which is a bug. So let's try and fix it real quick. I'm going to save. Now I'm going to try and commit it. And I already done something like this. So and remove typo in the tests. Okay, let's see. So again, let me just do a quick recap. Using Rookout, I was able to debug the code while it was running on CircleCI and to find the bug without needing to write even one line of code. So now I done a push, and hopefully now the test will pass. Let's see. So now the NPM is, like I said, installing and all of the dependencies. And like I said, one of the parts I hate is waiting for the tests to be green. And so here. Okay, so guys, the tests are green. I'm not sure if you noticed for test, which is great. I see I got 2 new messages on my Rookout IDE. And this time, first number equals 1, second number equals 1, result equals 0 because 1 minus 1 equals 0. So great, everything worked as expected. And using Rookout, I was able to find the bug and to fix it in a couple of minutes, which is great. Okay, so let's sum it up. Understanding your test flows shouldn't be hard. There's no need to write more code and redeploy to get the data you need from your real servers. You can save iteration, time, and context switching by simply installing the SDK. All of the webinar source code is available on our repository, and you can give it a try at rookout.com. I think it's question times, Eddie.
Awesome. It looks like the first question is for you, Etiel. Rookout supports Python, Node.js, and JVM. Any plans to support PHP?
Actually, a lot of people ask us for PHP, and I think it's the next language on the pipe. So yeah, we are definitely going there in the future.
Awesome. The next question is there any impact on application performance when using Rookout?
Okay, Adi, this is a great question. It is very relevant not only for running the test on CircleCI, but when you're adding Rookout and you're debugging your service, the production service. So I'm happy to say that Rookout has almost none impact on the performance. We collect very little, we have a very small footprint, and we have a lot of defenses that we don't take too much time or take too much CPU, too much memory. We do a lot of things in order for your server to run as expected.
Awesome. Another question was the same as the previous one about languages, but is there support for Swift? What about Ruby on Rails?
So we don't have support for Swift or Ruby on Rails at the moment. Ruby and PHP are the #1 and #2 languages that people are asking for us, and we're going to do it on the upcoming year, I believe. But at the moment, we don't have it. We do have, like you said, Python, Node.js, and all of the JVM, Java, Clojure, Groovy, everything.
Excellent. I think this next one is for me. Can anyone share an orb, or do you need to be a partner? And the idea of the orb ecosystem is that it is entirely open. So anyone who is a CircleCI member is able to publish orbs within their organization. It does require someone who is an administrator of the CircleCI space to claim a namespace. So every organization that leverages CircleCI can claim a namespace to publish the orbs under. And once that's done, you can let anyone within your organization publish orbs. And there's actually some of our most popular orbs to date have been those created by the third-party community. And I don't see any other questions coming in. So for those of you that are online with us, if you have any questions you would like to ask of myself or Itio, anything about Rookout CircleCI, we're happy to speak to them. Otherwise, as I mentioned, we will make all this content available offline. So you'll receive both the slide decks, the code repositories that Itio mentioned, and a video recording of this will be made available on YouTube shortly.